Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, and we battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time, according to two film geeks from Wiltshire, England. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe. Ding 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 ding.
It's obviously the Crazy Frog theme tune.
Really? I thought it was Mission Impossible myself, but
It's one of the two.
Of course, as No Time to Die has finally reached UK and US cinemas, we are going to focus on our favourite James Bond films. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Big himself.
Mr. Big.
There's
a James Bond villain.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Isn't it from... oh, God, that one that Paul McCartney did a song about.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that one.
Called?
Something Dark Side. What was it? Live and Let Die.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yes.
Live and Let Die.
Boaz Dix is with us, as always. How are you? All right? All good?
I'm fine.
Good.
I'm good, Blofeld.
All right. Just because I ain't got much hair, that's a cheap shot. That's a cheap shot there.
And you've got a cat on your lap currently.
I have a cat, yes. That is true.
Yeah.
It's not white.
Yeah.
We now have a Buy Me a Coffee account, so if you like what you hear and you want to send us your appreciation, you can just buy us a coffee and it will be much appreciated. Follow the link in the description below, and it's really easy, really simple, so yeah. Right, should we go with your pick then first, Boaz? What did you go with?
I went with Casino Royale.
Not the spoof?
Not the spoof one, no. I still haven't watched that one, actually. I need to crack on.
I watched it many years ago.
Was that like one of the first James Bond films? Like,
it was in the late 60s, I think they made that. Yeah.
Okay.
So why did you pick this one over the other Craig? Was it just the Craig ones for you that you're going to choose from? Or?
The only ones I'd really watched, like I'd watched a few of the older ones, like the Roger Moore ones, Man with the Golden Gun, and then Sean Connery. I watched Goldfinger, You Only Live Once, and
Twice.
You Only Live Twice. Well, technically everybody lives once, so yeah, but whatever. Yeah, you only live twice. And what was the other one? The one we just mentioned as well, with Mr. Big.
Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die. I've watched those, so I haven't watched like that many.
Okay.
The only ones I really watched were like the Pierce Brosnan era. I watched all of those, and the Daniel Craig era. So fairly modern, just kind of like within my lifetime.
Nice. So what happens in Casino Royale?
Casino Royale is James Bond's first mission. There's a international terrorist banker to terrorists.
Yeah.
Called Le Chiffre. And he watches after his clients' money, gives them interest and what have you, just like a regular banker, and they can deposit. But he gambles with their money on the stock market. So James Bond stops him, this plan that he has to short sell an airline, an experimental aircraft company, short sell their stock. And so he's lost all of his clients' money. So he needs to get that money back by a casino tournament that he holds. They get James Bond in to play him and win this tournament so that he'll have no money left, and that he'll be so worried that his clients are going to come for him that he'll go to MI6 and reveal everything about his clients, which find out later in the Daniel Craig mythos is Quantum, and then, Quantum is is a child organization or whatever to Spectre.
So is this very much your favourite Craig one then?
Yeah, I think it is actually my favourite Craig one.
I would say it is as well. Closely followed by Skyfall.
Yeah, I would do the same. When I watched Skyfall as well, I thought it was amazing. And as we've talked even before, Javier Bardem just steals the show. And I think he's my favorite. He is my favorite Daniel Craig Bond villain. He's just incredible, but he's incredible in everything. But I would say this to me, because this was the first Craig one I watched, and it leaves an impact on me, and even on rewatches, I do slightly edge it over Skyfall. But I do think Skyfall is also incredible.
Yeah, this one certainly is my favourite. I think it's got some really interesting and creative action scenes. Probably one of the best action scenes in the Craig era for me in this one. And it's pretty faithful to the book as well, the very first book. So I did like that and appreciate that. Directing then, I love the idea of having like the opening scene done in like black and white. You know, the fight in the bathroom is slightly grainy. Obviously, it's invoking the past, and it kind of adds this very like film noir feel, very dark, small office room with witty dialogue. This is very bold because this is the first Bond film with a black and white scene in it.
And also a lot of under angles, you know, to Bond, which makes him look quite intimidating and quite imposing, the first look at him.
Yeah, because no other Bond film has done that before, having a black and white scene, and it's just a nice stylish way to introduce a new Bond. Plus, it's the first one to use like the famous gun barrel walk and shoot, into the narrative in killing the guy in the bathroom. Plus, I was never convinced that guy was dead after Bond like supposedly drowned him in that shallow sink. I was like, really?
Yeah.
He ain't dead.
Yeah, for about 3 seconds, he's like, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
Well, I think they did say like it's his first kill, so maybe he just like doesn't know how to kill a person. I don't know.
Look for bathrooms with bigger sinks. There you go.
yeah. Although he learns very quickly through the rest of the film, he amasses quite the
body count.
Yeah. Killing is just like Doritos or no, actually it's Pringles, isn't it? Once you pop, you can't stop. You just got to keep going. Yeah.
Like the first big action scene is arguably the best action scene in the Craig era for me.
Yeah, I agree.
But what's great about it is the storytelling you get about this Bond's character, that he's not the finished article as Bond yet. The Bond maker is like really slick running through his obstacles with ease, uses parkour, whereas Bond will try and get to this guy as quickly as possible without really thinking about it. This Bond will drive through a construction site in a digger, bulldozing everything in sight. This Bond will just run through a plastered wall, not jump through the small hole. And if bouncing on your ass to get to the ground is the quickest way, then so be it.
Yeah.
Plus, I love the way like Daniel Craig shakes his face like a dog just before he gets up. It's pretty funny. After he falls flat on his face. That was funny. But the crane jump is pretty spectacular. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I think there's so much in that scene alone. There's so much going on, and it's so cool. And as you said, you get this. Just Bond is kind of meat and potatoes. He's just like I do like what M called him later in the film, like a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
This requires more than a blunt instrument. And throughout the film, he does like sharpen into something a little more delicate, like, a sort of more versatile Bond. But yeah, at the beginning, he is a blunt instrument. He is just a force of nature. He's like, just a hurricane or the Hulk. So he doesn't really think shit through. And I love it in that chase scene, as you said, just plowing through walls as this guy is doing all kinds of stuff. And blowing up a goddamn embassy because, it's in the way.
Yeah.
It's incredible,
I love how the poker scene is directed from Martin Campbell. The way the music does a lot of the heavy lifting with the dramatic moments. I like how Bond and Le Chiffre have like very different styles to the way they play. And use like the poker chips. Le Chiffre does this trick with them constantly as he places and he places them carefully when he bets. Whereas Bond just chucks them in. Then when Bond wins, you feel like the shots are a little tighter than before. When he goes on and wins, it's a lot closer, especially in the close-ups shots. Just to up the tension some more. I quite like those subtle directions there.
I like also how the camera pays attention to certain details. I mean, this is kind of 101, but the way it does it is so like fast and slick. I'll give you a couple of examples. Yeah. Like when he's poisoned. And I love that. Just like, look at Le Chiffre, look at him from like beside the martini. He's in shot. Then the martini's in shot. Then you're like, oh fuck, I'm drunk. And I just like it. It's so slick. Or just before like that stairway fight scene with the the African warlords, and I like that as well. Just how slickly it's shot, and just like they see the earpiece, they hear the thing.
Yeah, great visual storytelling.
Yeah, it's very visual, and I like how it just keeps it like, this is the tension, this is this, and it's all cut together really nice. And I can give so many examples where this film does it. When he's actually trying to, get the chest plate on that was delightfully tense. And
when he goes into the bathroom's very white, and they kind of overexpose the camera a little bit to make those whites like feel really blinding. And it's quite blurry as well, just to give that effect. That was quite nice.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting take, because even though it's third person and you're looking outside of Bond, it's still kind of invoking what Bond is probably going through at that period of time.
Yeah.
Like, he's dying, so, as you'd imagine, like, blurred vision and all that. But it's done from a third person rather than a first person sort of view.
It's quite interesting, actually, with the last action scene, because I think with the sinking house in Venice, because I think the camera... Everything up to this point has been very slick, but this has more of a rougher edge to it with the camera work, I think. It's such a unique and creative idea, this house sinking into the river is brilliant. And all the action around it feels really brutal. Bond certainly doesn't have it all his own way. He gets slashed. He has a nail in the shoulder. But I like the way he kills Gettler with like the nail gun in the eye. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. And then just pulls the nail out of his back, no problem. That was pretty badass.
Have you got a favourite shot then, or a favourite scene?
Yeah, I would say favourite scene is without a doubt the parkour chase.
Oh yeah.
Just a whole lot of it. I mean, that's just incredible.
My favourite shot is actually, I love the car crash scene where the Aston Martin DBS, rolls 7 times, which I think is still a world record for car rolls in a movie, which is really impressive. But why I like it so much, because you got to give a lot of respect to the cameraman on that, because I suspect that's a one and done scene. You're not going to get another chance to do that. There's a lot of pressure to capture that. Plus, I guess the camera operator would have some idea where the car will end up, but nothing for sure, so it's really great work, just capturing that in camera, Imagine if he gets it wrong, he's fired. Probably.
But even simple things like when Le Chiffre dies, I thought that was satisfying and also done really creatively, of him kind of out of shot, like maybe just his feet or whatever, and Bond and Mr. White, and he gets shot, and then his head
falls into
lands
shot,
into shot, and I thought that was a really creative way to film his death. That he falls into shot. Oh, actually, I would say another one that I really wanted to say. I fucking loved when that guy blew up. At the plane thing, where he thinks he's got Bond. He thinks he's got the bomb there. He's going to blow him up, and I love that. And it's and it's on his shirt. And you just get a close-up of Bond just with a little smirk. Like, I got you. That was a good...
Cool.
There's so many good scenes.
Score for me, for directing, purely as an action film, I think it's really brilliant. Structure-wise, it's a little unbalanced in terms of action, but I don't mind that so much. But I can understand why they did it, because pretty much the book starts when they get to the casino. So, they have to action it up. I do love the skill Martin Campbell has with directing the casino scenes with the Texas Hold'em game. I think that takes some real skill to get that right and have the tension there. Because I think I remember him saying that was probably one of the hardest scenes he had to direct, actually, it's not just, Bond and Le Chiffre, there's all these other characters are sitting around them that you've got to cover as well. So I think it's really quite skilled. So I'll go like a 9, I think.
In my head, like the number that just darts out to me is an 8.9.
Okay.
So just shy of 9.
Okay.
But it's still, absolutely brilliantly done.
Cool screenplay then. This film is a very stripped down version of the character. There's no gadgets, no money penny. It's all about adding the building blocks of Bond's character that we know and love in terms of his psychology and relationship to M. M tells him to take his ego and emotion out of the equation, which he very much learns to do that at the end of this film when he falls for Vesper. The film develops M and Bond's relationship so M can trust him to get the job done. At the start, she certainly can't. And I feel like They do that with humor as well at times. When Bond needs to get through the security door in the Miami airport, and calls M, and when he gets through, Bond works out the code and just puts the phone down on her, So the film has to develop their relationship. It's very much at odds, certainly in those parts, with humor. And in the end, M is the only person Bond can really trust.
Yeah, I really like, anytime they talk, but I really like their first meeting, where he breaks into a house. I think that's just wonderful. It does get basically their opinions of each other, just so much. And I just like the witty quips and the back and forth. I just thought it was really good. Especially because, she's been M throughout the Bronson era. And just...
Brosnan. Bronson was last week.
Oh, Bronson. Yeah, shit, sorry. You're confuddling my mind. That said, what do you think about Tom Hardy being James Bond? I don't know.
I think he's too famous, I think. To be fair. They always go with a fairly unknown, I would say. They usually do.
Yeah, anyway, so what the hell was I going to say? Yeah, no, but I like that she's been in it for quite a long time, and they have this basically battle of wits and verbal stuff. But I think that's a great way to, see if Daniel Craig is sort of ready for this role. Do you get what I mean? It's like vetting him out.
Because there's a great moment when, Craig says, "Oh, I didn't know standard for this. I thought it was just a randomly assigned letter," and M's like, "Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed," and he doesn't say a word. He's just still as anything.
Yeah, I like that. I was actually going to say that. That was my favourite line in their exchange.
I love the opening dialogue scene with Bond and Vesper Lynn, actually. It's really snappy and witty, and they try and guess what their backgrounds are and try to one-up each other, because they don't really like each other, I don't think, in the beginning, especially Vesper doesn't like Bond much. Vesper doesn't really like the plan, and Bond doesn't think he needs her on the mission. The only disappointing thing is there's a blatant product placement with the Omega watch. Vesper just randomly says, "Rolex?" Bond says, "Omega." And it's like, have we just cut to an ad break for a few seconds? What's going on?
Yeah, that was quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's just annoying you have to put product placement in, but it's just a slightly obvious one.
My suit is Armani.
As I said, I do feel like the action in this film is a bit top-heavy, because they only really start the book when they leave Miami, and they do shoehorn in an action scene in the middle of the casino scenes. A very good action scene, I might add. On the whole, they adapt the book really well. They keep the main story points. The torture scene is in there, and I think is a lot better in this film, actually, rather than in the book. Vesper's death is still in there, but it's not suicide. All the Venice stuff is all added. In the book, they kind of just stay in... I think it's all in France, actually. They just stay in France. The one change that does bother me a little bit, because I'm a Bond purist, but I understand why they changed it, is they changed the card game they play from Baccarat to Poker Texas Hold'em. If anything, Poker is actually a more complicated game, but obviously is more common card game. But in a lot of other Bond films, he plays Baccarat in scenes where it's pretty important on what's going on. So it's a little gripe. But again, there's part of me, I don't see why they can't use Baccarat.
Yeah, I think they could have used Baccarat. I think we were talking about this some other time before. Well, I just think it's kind of just the relative popularity of poker compared to Baccarat. I'm not saying everybody understands poker, but poker is a very big casino game. It is the biggest card game, So I think a lot of people would easily follow it, a poker game.
I love the shower scene where Vesper is just sitting down in the shower, still in her purple dress after the fight scene in the stairwell. And Bond sits down with her and she says, "It's like there's blood on my hands. It's not coming off." And then Bond sits down with her and says, "Here, let me see." And he takes her hand and sucks her fingers and just says, "That's better." Those lines are just really beautifully written, and such a tender moment for a film like this. It ponders the question, would a fully fledged Bond, only trusting M, show such tenderness again? I'm not sure he would. So it's kind of interesting how Bond trusts people less and less by the end. So it's just a really interesting scene that you've never really seen before in a Bond film previously.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, like, my favourite line. My favourite line is when he's getting tortured.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. That's so funny. And he's just thwacking him in the nuts.
That is my favourite line as well, yeah.
Yeah. And I just like where he goes, so are you going to tell me? And he's like, I've got an itch down there. Do you mind? It's like, boom, to the right.
To the right. To the right.
Yeah. Yes. Now everybody's going to know you died scratching my balls.
Yeah. Yeah, as always, this film does have a lot of great funny lines in it. From M, like, have you ever seen such a bunch of self-righteous arse-covering prigs? So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed arse. You noticed? Even accountants have imagination.
How was the lamb skewered? One sympathizer.
Yeah, it's just really well written in terms of dialogue, this film.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of, like, all the romantic stuff. Essentially, this film is a love story, and how Bond's heart basically gets torn up at the end, pretty much. And I do like the moments between Vesper and Bond where they're in the hotel grounds and in the sunshine, and after Mendel, the brilliant Belgian banker, transfers the funds to them. And the guilt is coming through for Vesper, but Bond is, like, completely blinded by his love for her, and Vesper says, "You're not going to let me in there, are you? You've got your armor back on. That's that." And then Bond says, like, "I have no armor left. You've stripped it from me. Whatever is left of me, whatever is left of me, whatever I am, I'm yours." Really beautiful lines you expect in, like, a romance melodrama. But I think it shows kind of like the naivety of both characters at this point in the story. They just think they can run away with each other, and Bond is blinded by love, and Vesper thinks that Bond never needs to know about her past. It's interesting as well that the producers made it very clear that they didn't like the way Vesper dies in the book, because she basically takes an overdose of pills and commits suicide because the guilt is too much for her. So they kind of changed that a bit. Obviously it wouldn't look good for a female character in this film, but they kind of still keep, like, the mindset of Vesper's emotions when they're on the beach. The guilt is still lingering when she says, "Does everyone have a tell?" And Bond says, "Yes, everyone except you." And then later you get an insight about why Bond is such a brutal, cold character at times, when he says, like you said, you do what I do for too long, and there won't be any soul left to salvage. I'm leaving with what little I have left. Is that enough for you? It's like this Bond is fully aware of what he is, and that's basically an assassin. And at this stage, like in Bond's story, he'll take any chance he gets to get out if it's not too late. Well, as soon as he learns that if he falls for someone, it's dangerous, and so in the end, he can't fully trust anyone, and he has no choice but to do what he's good at, which is frustrating with what's happened in Spectre with the fairly weak storyline in there. So I just really like how this film is really faithful to the book in terms of both these characters, really. So screenplay score for me, I will go like 8.6.
That's a really good score. Yeah, I think I'll copy that. Exactly.
All right, acting then. I think if you're going to play Bond, you have to do, like, the comedy well.
Yeah.
Craig is no exception. Daniel is really great with comedy at his own expense. There's a great little scene where Vesper is getting ready for the evening game, and I like the little dramatic whip pan to set up the dinner jacket joke, where Vesper says, "There are dinner jackets and dinner jackets. This is the latter." And then Bond says, "It's tailored." It's just a very different type of humour, perfect for a character growing into the role. It's just, he's not the untouchable Bond just yet at this stage.
And he has some really damn badass lines, and I think he does them, like, really well, and just like a badass, picture perfect badass. I quite like when he leaves that. What was it? When he leaves that girl in the hotel, in his hotel, and he's on the phone to the reception. So what was it? He's ordering champagne,
And
It's
caviar,
like,
yeah.
so
something like that.
champagne and caviar. He goes, for two? Is like, no, for one. But I just love how
Yeah.
it kind of delivers that. It's like, I don't give a fuck, Goes off to kill her husband.
The stairwell fight is really great. Like, the pace of the action is really quick and it feels really brutal. You can really feel the impact. Certainly Daniel Craig can, because I think he lost a tooth in that fight.
Jesus. I think what's brilliant is that in a lot of the fights that that James Bond is in, his face is like front and center. So where it is definitely Daniel Craig.
Yeah, doing this.
It's definitely Daniel Craig. Yeah, doing the stunts. And you're like, there's a bloody machete flying very close to his face, and you're like, dude, that's Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
I love that attention to detail. He's definitely, fit and energetic enough to do this, and then his acting as well of really coming off convincing that he's in a hell of a lot of trouble. Every time. It must have been exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, what I also like about that is that you see the aftermath of that fight with Craig looking in the mirror like he drinks some scotch. And he's like, oh, that was tough. You were lucky to get out of that type look in the mirror, And there is kind of like some genuine fear there, I think, as well. And you don't often get these reflective moments in a Bond movie. Again, it's another moment of Bond developing into the fully fledged James Bond. I love the acting from Mads Mikkelsen and Daniel Craig. When Bond has been poisoned, as you said, Craig tries to play it cool to shake it off when he's been poisoned, but he can't. And Mads just has this brilliant, like, soft look where he's like, "Oh, are you okay?"
Yeah.
Plus, the look on like Mads' face is amazing when Bond sits back down. Mads, he's just so surprised, like, "What the hell? You're not supposed to be back. You're supposed to be dead."
Yeah.
He does like very little in his face in all his scenes, and you know exactly what he's thinking with the smallest look. Such a subtle, watchable actor.
I completely agree with you. I think even when we discussed Mads Mikkelsen's film, he can do very little with his face, and it's like you can read his mind. You can tell what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And I just love it with this character because he can be so in control. Like when he's first introduced, he's very in control. He's got that look, you're like, okay. But then just, he just looks so nervous at times, like when they come in for him, the warlords and stuff and threatening his girl.
Yeah.
And just like the looks on his face, he looks terrified, but it looks like he's terrified while trying to look cool.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a kind of subtle. It's not like he's a whimpering, hyperventilating wreck. He's trying to look calm. And you can see just at the edges, there's some break in that. It's subtle.
We've talked a little bit about the torture scene, but I think Daniel Craig is brilliant in that, where he's, really going for it, screaming in agony when Le Chiffre smacks his bollocks with this chunky piece of rope. And as a man watching that for the first time, it's really quite difficult to watch. Like, fuck me. And it's way better in this film because in the book, like, I don't think he's naked. I can't remember if he's naked. I can't remember, but they basically use like a carpet beater. It's just like it's basically a big fly swatter. So they do that instead. So a big chunky rope is a hell of a lot more painful, I would imagine.
Oh God, yeah. How is he able to have sex after this film? Like, he's such a ladies' man. But surely any woman that takes a look at his junk after this movie, it's got to be like a big, swollen purple, blue, and green mess, right?
Well, they don't specify how long he was in that hospital. So, a very, very long time.
They did surgery. They did like a transplant of a cock and balls.
Or Daniel Craig has massive nuts.
Yeah, which are as strong as steel. Yeah. It's got balls of literal iron.
But I just love the way, like, Craig goes from, like, a hysterical laughter. Craig is really impressive in that after, like, the scratching of his balls joke. And he goes from that to, like, looking shit scared after hearing Vesper screaming. And then laughter again, this slow build-up of laughter. It's just, like, really skilled from Daniel Craig there.
Yeah, you get this kind of feeling like he's just accepting it. Like, he's obviously very worried for Vesper. Like, this is the fucking terrible. Maybe he's considering it, but then he's just like, do you know what? Fuck it. He's just going to accept it. We're both going to die. It's fine.
I think Eva Green is amazing in this film as well. I really like her performance, especially like her basically her last scene underwater. Like, the acting from Eva Green while she's drowning at the end is pretty remarkable, and it looks terrifying. The level of emotion she can show underwater is quite brilliant, really. How she does that, I don't know. Like, surely, I don't... Yeah, there must be some trickery there, I don't know.
She graduated in her class in underwater acting.
Yes. Daniel was incredible too after Vesper dies, you know, breathing heavily like he's so angry with himself, to this very, like, longing look towards her, because obviously he loved her. You got a favourite performance?
Yeah, I think Daniel Craig, at any particular point... Actually, when he realises that she's betrayed him, that's really good. I quite like that. Of just, like over the phone, and he's like... You know, even if you're not really following it, he's just...
Well,
like,
when he sees the text messages in Venice, you mean? Or...
Yeah, and the text messages, and then he's on the phone, and he's just, you know, fucking hell. It's like, it's just completely blown his mind, and I just like the looks he gives off.
Yeah, mine is Daniel Craig as well. I think followed very, very closely by a joint second of Eva Green and Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
I think they're both tremendous. So, score for me, I'll go 88. 88?
88.
I've still got the...
88 out of 10.
I've still got the Back to the Future musical in my head. Anyway. I'll go 8.8.
Alright, yeah.
How about you, sir?
Okay, this time I'm not going to try and copy you. I'm going to go an 8.3.
8.3? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Casino Royale. With cheese.
Yeah. I think maybe why I'm going a little lower. It's phenomenal. I just don't want to give it too high because, in my opinion, those were the 3 like amazing performances.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like everybody was amazing. Like those 3 were incredible. So I'm just going to give it that.
Okay.
I think we've had films where, you know, most of the cast have been, you know, like 9s. So.
Casino Royale gets 52.2. Good luck for yours only. Right, my choice then is certainly not one of the best James Bond films. I don't think I would ever put it in the top 10. But as a kid, I just found this one really great, you know. When I was a kid, like early teens, I had watched all the James Bond films many times up until like Die Another Day. And I always like, this is my favourite. And my favourite as a teenager was always For Your Eyes Only. Because I was just like, it's got a great action. You know, it's got an underwater scene. It's got skiing. It's got a cool car chase. It's got good fisticuffs. It's got a good twist with the bad guy. Really good Bond girl with a crossbow.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny. So I was just like, this is my favourite. And I kind of picked this one to just reevaluate that fact to see, is it really my favourite?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is. So that's why I kind of picked this one. I think for me, genuinely, the best one for me probably is Goldfinger, is the best Bond film. So what happens in For Your Eyes Only? Well, I'll skip the opening scene because it has fuck all to do with the plot of the film. After the title sequence, we are with like a British spy ship, which is disguised as a fishing vessel. Yeah, and it has a device called an ATAC, which basically can transmit messages or signals to all the British submarines to fire, you know, on the enemy, basically in secret. But the fishing trawler catches a sea mine, and they kind of like, oh shit, an unidentified object has come out of nowhere, and it's just an old sea mine. So the ship sinks. So then Bond is basically tasked to find it, basically, and get it back to the British. And you have the Russians trying to get it as well. So Bond was going to find his contact in Greece, an archaeologist, to find the wreck, but he gets assassinated by a Greek assassin who's working for the Russians. So he finds Melina, their contact's daughter. So she is kind of on like a revenge tale to find the killers of her parents. So as Bond goes deeper into the story, he finds out that there's two like organizations kind of Christatos and his men, who's kind of working with like the Olympic team, has like a cover, I think, with a character called BB, who's a figure skater. So that's kind of a front, I guess, for his operations. And then this underground organization called the Dove, which is headed by the brilliant Topol, who plays Columbo. And you soon realize that Christatos is actually the bad guy, played by Julian Glover, and Topol is actually on Bond's side and needs Bond's help as well to take down Christatos' men. And they both end up at St. Cyril's, an abandoned monastery on the top of a big rock. And basically, Bond needs to get the ATAC back, and he ends up just throwing it off the cliff. And just to say,
no one has it.
Yeah. I don't have it, you don't have it, so it's quite an interesting spy story. And certainly For Your Eyes Only was very much a reaction to the god-awful Moonraker, which is basically a pastiche of itself. Just way too many jokes. There's even a double-taking pigeon in there. I mean, Jaws has a girlfriend in space at the end. It's very bizarre. Yeah. So it's interesting, this one. It's a lot more serious, more grounded.
I need to properly watch Moonraker. Like, you're making Moonraker sound like an Austin Powers movie.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. I don't know.
So what did you make of this one then, Boaz?
Yeah, I mean, there were things I liked and there were things I really, really didn't like.
Okay.
But yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting.
So, I like the little reference to James Bond's wife, who was killed on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Bond lays down some flowers by her grave. That was quite a nice touch to start the film. A nice nod to Bond's history in previous films. But the opening action scene is fairly tame with a helicopter. But I like the commitment of not showing Blofeld's face in the wheelchair like they did in the Connery era. Until the last one, obviously.
Yeah. Do you know, I was actually, I've got an interesting tidbit. I was reading about the Blofeld thing, and it's to do with a whole legal case. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
I can't remember the names involved, but a screenwriter basically claimed that he made most of the plot points for, is it Thunderball?
Yeah, it's a whole mess with that.
Yeah. He was basically like, it was kind of like a back loop thing. He was discussing making a film with, fucking hell. What's the guy that wrote the James Bond? Ian Fleming. That's the one, Fleming.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Boaz is not a James Bond aficionado, if whatever that.
Not aficionado. Whatever.
He is not aficionado about James Bond.
He was going to do a film with, Ian Fleming's support and another screenwriter, which was going to be slightly based on an older James Bond book. And they made that up, so most of it wasn't, an exact copy of that, but it included things like Blofeld and many other things. And then when Ian Fleming wrote Thunderball, he claimed that he just basically stole a lot of the stuff that they were working out in this adaptation for the film. So he was like, dude, all of this is mine. And he won that, so he won the rights to Thunderball. And so for quite a period of time, they weren't allowed to use Blofeld because he had appeared in Thunderball. And so even though he basically is Blofeld, they didn't call him that in the credits, and they just wanted to kill him off unceremoniously to just say fuck off.
Yeah, because that guy, I can't remember his name, but he made Never Say Never Again, who they used Blofeld in that film, which came out at the same time as Octopussy. In that 1 year, you had an official James Bond film and a non-official one with Sean Connery coming out at the same time.
Yeah,
it was
really
bizarre. It's quite bad though, that one.
Yeah.
Well, but they both are, to be honest. They're both not very good. Octopussy makes no sense.
But that screenwriter was able to make Never Say Never Again because most of the plot is essentially Thunderball. So he was just I'm really just making a remake of the only Bond property I have sole rights to.
I love the little yellow Citroen car chase through the Greek hills. It's just really charming and quite inventive, where Bond brakes hard on the brakes, and one of the cars tries to run him off the road, but ends up taking out one of his own goons' cars. You know, the jump over one of the black cars was quite nice, where it kind of like taps one of them on the roof as it goes over. That was quite cool. Great music as well.
James Bond skiing, just amazingly, obviously a stunt double.
Yeah.
but it's still practical. I do love that.
I didn't think it was that obvious. It was stunt double, but
I think the stunt double was well hidden. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It did look like, and he was doing all this trick stuff. Where it definitely I was like, yeah, that's obviously not him, is when they did the, the look back. Like, I think it was like, they have the camera of, James Bond doing all this shit, and then the camera on Roger Moore. And I was like, that's obviously a soundstage. He's not on a pair of skis, I was like, yeah, that's obviously a soundstage.
I really liked, the ski chase stuff, actually. The way it kind of develops, that's kind of my favorite scene, I guess, in Italy. Like, it starts with the cameras tracking Bond skiing through the forest at a distance, and then Eric Kriegler's rifle comes into shot aiming at Bond, which is a really nice shot there from John Glenn. I liked how the action scene keeps developing. You have some cat and mouse stuff with Kriegler trying to snipe out Bond, then some cool ski jumps, then Bond escaping through the crowd at the ski jump event.
Yeah.
And then the absurdity of Bond going down the ski jump with another goon at the same time.
Yeah, that was cool.
To the more traditional, like, ski chase against the bikes, where the music really kicks in. There's a really cool jump where, like, Bond slides through a table, breaking a load of glasses.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was a really nice stunt there.
I liked when he was skiing down the what do they call it?
The bobsleigh.
Bobsled, yeah, the bobsled track. That was cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. So, yeah, I did like the development of it. I mean, it was pretty awesome. My problem with it is it happened. It was such a good scene, but it happened not long after another action scene. And then there was another one that came after that. So I felt it was just a bit overwhelming. I was like...
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Interesting.
I would have rather they had spaced it out a bit more. But I did like the scene. I was just like, man, it's just come on. It's too soon after another action scene. Which also was a chase. It's like, just space it out a bit.
There is actually a lot of action.
There is a lot of action in this film, which surprised me. But yeah, I would say one of my favorites is definitely the ski chase. I thought that was incredible.
Did you notice a young Charles Dance in that?
Yes, I did. I know.
Yeah.
I was like, that's Tywin Lannister. What is he doing? He got lost.
Yeah.
This is not King's Landing.
I like the way Bond kills Locke, the guy with the octagonal glasses, where he chases Locke up a hill on foot through tunnels and stairs, which I guess is a great workout for Sir Roger. I guess he'd love that. And somehow beats Locke, who is in a car, to the top. He shoots him in the car, and the car ends up teetering on the edge of the cliff. And I love the great music cue when the film cuts to a wide shot to reveal how big the cliff is. The way Bond chucks the dove pin in the car, which makes the car start to fall off the cliff, and then Bond just kicking it for good measure. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Plus, the light in that scene is really beautiful as the sun is coming up, really softly lit. And did you notice the dummy coming out of the car, like right at the end, like flipping out the window?
Yeah,
that was really funny.
Yeah, oh, his underwater battle with that. God knows what the fuck that guy was wearing. What the hell was that? He was in a diving suit with mechanical arms.
Yeah, I think they said it was like deep sea salvage suit.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, it definitely felt tense. Bond gets knocked out, she's being hoisted up, and her oxygen equipment is being torn to shreds. Like, closes up on that, and Bond puts the bomb on him and is trying to like just buy as much time, just like hitting him and things. I thought that was cool.
I quite like the anonymous like POV shots of like, before you know what it looks like, of them following them into the wreck with the heavy breathing. It's kind of like a slasher film at that point.
Yeah, I quite like that. I thought it was going to be a shark or something. I was like, this is definitely Jaws, and it's like, what the hell is that?
As a kid watching it, it did seem pretty scary at the time. Now it does look slightly clunky, certainly in some wide shots. but still pretty tense. And then, like, when Bond and Melina escape after the explosion, they get back to Neptune, the submarine, and you think they're safe, but no, you have another ominous figure approaching them, in the following submarine battle. Is pretty tense as well, I think, and it's not obvious how Bond is going to get out of it,
Yeah. And that was also where he escapes, basically. I thought that was cool, where he's basically tied him up to their boat and is just going to batter them on the reef, just cut them up on the reef. I did like that. And the fact that they got, the blood coming off of him as they're battering across. And, it looked pretty brutal, And then he ties it up underwater. I thought that was all just done really well. I would say by far my favourite scene in this entire film, like just hands down, is the mountain climbing bit.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
No, I would say, like, that was so tense. To me, that just blew my breath away. And it's so simple because, to me, really, it really was. Because, there are, like, larger action scenes and more stuff goes on. And in all these ones that I've said, there's more skill, there's more effects, it costs more, and there's more men and all this other stuff. But he's climbing this mountain and it looks fucking high. And they do these wide shots where, dude, he is really, really high. And he's almost falling. And there's this guy who he sort of suspects something's going on. But then he goes back and you think, oh, okay, the coast is clear. He's going to keep on climbing. And then this, what was it? This guy starts, like, trying to, do you know what I mean? Like, I think...
whack out the
peg. I thought that was amazing. Like, I think one of the pegs slipped and he notices him and he's firing at him. Bond is hidden and he's trying to, like, pull himself up. And then he's just coming down and whacking out the pegs. I thought that was so tense. And there's just one peg left. And he climbs up and, like, boom! Throws a knife at him and then climbs up his rope. I just thought it was a really good scene.
The only thing that isn't great about that, though, is when they do get to the top, the fisticuffs is pretty tame, to be fair. It's and then it just ends. I'm like, oh, okay. Is that it?
Well, it's one of these things where, like, almost anybody can be taken down, with just, like, I don't know, like a judo chop and then, they're gone.
This film actually has a lot of similarities with Casino Royale. I think these two films are the only two Bond films that James Bond doesn't kill the big bad at the end. Columbo kills Kristatos, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
And Mr. White kills Mads Mikkelsen, Le Chiffre.
Yeah. So. Okay, I'll tell you one thing I absolutely despised in this movie.
Okay.
And this has got to go in directing.
All right,
And this is... so you know what ADR...
Cover your ears, people.
Yeah, but you know ADR, yeah?
So right.
The ADR in this film is just atrocious. There are so many scenes where Bond will say a quip, and I'm like, he did that in a studio. He's just This is so not happening right now. He is in a soundstage or whatever. It just sounds so out of place. And there are so many scenes where the ADR is just really bad, where they've re-recorded dialogue. And it just doesn't sound natural. It just doesn't fit.
I did notice that, certainly with Melina's character. I was like, yeah, that's not great.
Every single line of hers is ADR. And so it just sounds bizarre. Like everybody else is having a natural, conversation. It's out in, the environment. They're actually having it. And then all of her lines, it's just really strange. Like they just sound like she's on the radio or whatever. It just doesn't sound natural. And so you have that with her character, which is distracting as hell. But then you also have re-recorded lines of Bond and other characters. And I just don't think it's done well. The ADR is just really piss poor in this film. And it kept dragging me out of it. I was just like, this is... Yeah, so that was one thing I really didn't like about this movie.
Okay. Directing score?
I'll go... this might piss you off. I don't care. Fuck it. I'll go a 6.8.
What? Oh, Roger Moore is turning in his grave. The poor man. I do have a big soft spot for this film, so I'm gonna go like a 7.5. 7.4. Okay, right. Screenplay then. Did you notice another thing this film has in common with Casino Royale?
No, what's that?
Bond uses no gadgets in this film.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Back to basics.
very much a reaction to the terrible Moonraker.
Yeah.
Which he does actually have some really cool gadgets in that film, but yeah. So this film is a lot more gritty, and Bond has to get out of these situations using his wits and brains a lot more. You know, that, as you mentioned in the climbing stuff, he takes the laces out of his shoes to climb up the rope. You know, in another Bond film, he would like have a grappling gun or something to whiz himself up or whatever.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say this. I think maybe I was too harsh on the directing. I really fucking hated the ADR though. It's really bad.
Yeah.
To me, it almost single-handedly ruined the movie. I'll give it go backtrack. I'll give it a 7.2.
Okay.
I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
I won't be that harsh on it. But the ADR is really fucking bad. Anyway, yeah.
I think this film has one of the best Bond girls for me in the series, in Melanie Havelock, played by Carol Bouquet. You know, she's actually got a genuine arc of, you know, will she take revenge on her parents' killers or not? You know, this whole thing Bond tells her, you know, the Chinese saying, before you take your revenge, dig 2 graves. That was quite a nice touch with the script and her story. Yeah.
I think it is really nice. It's kind of funny for Bond to say that. He's probably dug thousands of graves by now.
Well, he's a professional, though. He doesn't take...
It's not personal.
It's not personal, yeah, certainly not. Not in this film, anyway.
No.
Whereas most Bond girls of this era, pre-80s, you know, they have nothing really to do but just be really disposable. Melina has a really, like, emotional story to it. Plus, she has a crossbow. I mean, come on, that's cool.
I mean, I think that was really cool when she was introduced with the crossbow, and that Bond has basically tracked down the assassin. He's at his pool, and he's been cornered. He sees this guy like pay him off or whatever, but he's cornered, you know. And then as the guy is taking a dive into his pool, he gets shot in the back with a crossbow. I thought that was damn cool.
You say the ADR was bad, but I think they got the timing of the sound effect really wrong with that. So I think you get the impact literally as he's in the water.
Yeah, that does work, yeah.
But yeah, she has a really great line, like near the end, where they're preparing to attack St. Cyril's, and Columbo says, "But we are only 5 men." And Melina says, "And 1 woman." That was cool.
That's worth 100 people. Obviously.
I think the reveal of the fact that Christatos is actually the bad guy could have been a lot more dramatic in this film. You know, Columbo just tells Bond that he was actually talking about himself, about the heroin smuggling, etc. But Bond has to take his word for it, basically.
Yeah.
I know he, like, hands him his gun, you know, a trust gesture. But then you have this whole action scene just to make, you know, Bond trust Columbo. I think they could have been a lot more dramatic in that reveal, rather than just Columbo telling you, "Oh, Christatos is actually the bad guy, by the way."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. If they had him do something villainous or whatever. And also, you know, they even do kind of like he acts all nice before the reveal, and then after the reveal, he's just an irredeemable asshole who's just hitting people and just being a dick, you know. It's very on the nose.
The storytelling is a bit disjointed at times when he's in Italy. Like, Bond seems to be with BB way too much, trying to find out information on Locke. And we don't see, like, Melina, which seems like for a while before we see her again. Then you have the action scene with Columbo at night, and then all of a sudden Bond is back with Melina. And it's just like, oh... I think the film doesn't flow from scene to scene as well as it could have. Plus, BB in this film is quite annoying. Certainly watching it again.
Yeah, she's very, very irritating. And I think, you know, I am somewhat justified in saying, like, I think some of the action scenes should have been spaced out a bit more, especially towards when he gets to the retreat in Italy, and it just felt a bit too much. Like, there was this and there was that and there was this, and then he goes off to see BB, and as soon as she's gone, there's another fucking fight scene.
I think you could have lost that weird hockey fight scene. It was bizarre.
Yeah, the hockey one. I mean, it was a stupid fight scene, but it was like, and to me, I think it cheapens what I think is a really good fight scene, the ski scene, when you're sandwiching it between lesser fight scenes, where you're like, dude, just let it breathe. Like, you don't need this crap. I think maybe they just had a lot of money to burn. They were like, well, we've got the costumes and the people.
Yeah.
Let's just add a couple of fight scenes here.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
make a joke out of it, of putting them all in the goal.
Yeah, that was quite funny.
I find it funny when in the underwater scene where Bond and Melina are exploring the wreck of the St. George's, and I love the fact that Bond says, "Conserve your gas supply, speak only when necessary." And then when the shark comes out of nowhere, he says, "Oh, I hope he was dining alone." I was like, Bond, you just broke your own rule there, bud.
Yeah.
He can't help himself.
Oh, God. He's got a quip.
Yeah.
Quip. That's essential. That's an essential use of it.
Yeah. I think this film certainly has one of the funniest endings of a Bond film. It's cheesy as fuck, but I just find it hilarious. Bond saved the days with Melina, smoochy. Bond leaves his watch with the parrot, which has a communication device on it, and is talking to Margaret Thatcher, saying, "Give us a kiss." And then the guys at MI6 are just saying, "Bond, have you gone mad?" Give us a kiss. That was so good. A lot of other great lines. Oh yeah, one of the most bizarre ones at the start when Blofeld is just about to be dropped into the chimney, and he says, "We can make a deal. I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel," which is really bizarre. You must know James Bond loves his cheese. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, that was a weird scene. I don't think that really belonged in this movie at all.
Apparently, it's because Cubby Broccoli, one of the producers of the Bond films, apparently, like, in the gangster era in the 30s, they bribed people with giving them delicatessens, apparently, in stainless steel.
All right.
Very bizarre. Take the low road. The car flips over. Not that low.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
In Q's lab, there's an umbrella with claws on it, and a girl pours water on it, and the umbrella comes down quickly on the dummy, and Bond says, "Stinging in the rain." That's not funny, 007. Bond says, "A nose, not a banana, Q," when they're doing the
oh yeah, the
identigraph thing.
Identigraph, yeah. I'm sure it would have been more efficient if he just had like a sketch artist, you know.
Yeah.
That was kind of bizarre.
Very dated.
Very dated. You're like, dude, this looks nothing like any individual ever. You know? It's like, vroom, oh yeah, we found him. Really?
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Have you got a favourite line then? A Bond quip?
You go first, and I'll try and remember one.
I think a very Roger Moore one. "I love driving in the country, don't you?" During the Citroen chase down the hill when they, knocking through all the olive trees.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. All I can think of is he had no head for heights, but I don't even think that quip makes much sense.
No.
Yeah, it's like he didn't lose his head. You just pushed him over the cliff. Like, what does that got to do with heads? I don't get that quip at all.
So, score, Boaz, what are you going to go for?
I was going to say, like, I didn't really give a shit about like the conspiracy and everything, like going in. It was quite complicated for me. I don't know. I'll go 6.9.
I mean, the last scene is hilarious. I think it certainly does have some like juxtaposition issues and flowing from scene to scene issues, and I think the film could have been a lot more dramatic. And actually a bit more emotional, actually, between the characters of Columbo and Christatos, and even, to be fair, with Melina and Christatos. I think with a film like this, all the attention is always going to be on like the main villain and Roger Moore as Bond. So certainly as a pure action film, it's pretty enjoyable.
Well, one of the things I thought was kind of like a shame is I felt he had more of a build-up and more of a chemistry with the assassin. Who had been tracking through a lot of the film, the one he pushed it off the cliff, and who even murdered a woman he slept with in like cold blood, like ran her over.
Yeah, that was really brutal.
That was really brutal. Just rammed into her. Like, he was a sick fuck, and they had loads of stare downs and chases. I'm almost kind of annoyed that he
He
wasn't.
doesn't have any lines, does he?
No, he doesn't have any lines. But I'm kind of a bit gutted he wasn't actually the main adversary. Like when he kind of disappeared in, I think was it the first 2/3, someone in the
Yeah.
you know. And then it's like this whole conspiracy of who is it, Columbo or Kristatos, and it's Kristatos. I didn't feel the rivalry between them two. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I liked more with the other guy. It's like why didn't he just carry on? You know?
I think it would have made sense actually if Kristatos and Columbo had a scene together.
Yeah.
I think that would have tied the film up a lot better. I think
Yeah.
nothing long or anything, but I think for the emotional stakes for both those characters, I think it would have benefited from.
Because when he even talks about Columbo, Kristatos, when he has a dinner with Bond, he's over there somewhere, and he's just like, I think he's definitely the KGB informant guy. And you don't really get, they just talk about each other. They don't actually talk to each other. You don't get the sense of that hatred or rivalry.
So I'll go like 7.1, I think. Mainly because I think they write a good Bond girl in it. I think that you got to give kudos for that.
Yeah. I definitely think her revenge arc and all that is pretty damn cool.
Right, acting then. Unfortunately, this is the first like Roger Moore Bond film, where Roger does look a bit old in the role, slightly old, and he really should have stopped after this film. Because when you get to A View to Kill, like the only thing missing in that film is Bond's walking stick. I mean, but in this one, I think they do hide, on the whole, the stuntman, the stunt doubles pretty well, I think, on the whole. Yeah. Whereas in A View to a Kill, it's like night and day. For me, A View to a Kill is the worst Bond film they've made. It's really bad. I love the moment when BB is in Bond's bed and Bond says, "I don't think your Uncle Harry would approve." And BB says, "Him? He thinks I'm still a virgin." And then Bond says, "Yes, well, put your clothes on and I'll buy you an ice cream." And Roger Moore's face is so funny, where he just looks slightly embarrassed and like taken aback. It's just like, what the hell is going on? It's really odd.
Yeah.
But I think Roger Moore just plays it perfectly there. I like the second conversation Bond has with Kristatos, where at this point you don't think, he's a bad guy until Bond gets up and walks off. And Julian Glover does this brilliant, like, shifty eyes for a brief moment. And I think it's there just to make the audience begin to think twice about who Kristatos is, really. At what point did you realise Kristatos was the bad guy? Did you see it coming, or...?
I don't think I saw it coming. No.
All right.
I mean, I think in retrospect, I mean, he was should have seen it coming, I suppose. But then I was kind of trying to follow what was going on, so
right.
Then it came, this guy is actually a bad guy, and they're looking for another guy. Okay.
I thought Topol was great as Columbo, this very like suave, charismatic character. And it's just a shame he only turns up like halfway through the film, and I definitely wanted more of Topol.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, he was a very charismatic guy.
That said, I think he's still my favourite performance, weirdly. I'm going to go with Topol.
Yeah.
How about you, sir?
I don't know, man. Like, I think maybe I'll just go with Roger Moore.
Okay, yeah. No big standouts there.
Yeah, I do agree with you, actually. Topol does a pretty damn... that actor does a good performance. I thought he was very enjoyable. Should have been in it more.
Score? I mean, you got to love Roger Moore's double takes.
Yeah,
I still have those in there.
Yeah, and his sarcasm is done wonderfully.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell, it's so difficult. This is really difficult because every time I think of something that's pretty good, I think of like some performance that was really bad. So
okay, tonight would be amazing.
Yeah. Fuck it, I'll go. Oh man, this is so hard.
Casino Royale's going to win anyway, so it doesn't really make much difference.
I'll go. Oh god, this is so difficult. I'll go. I don't want to say 7. Like it just feels wrong. I'll go
6.6.
6.7.
Okay,
there we go.
I think this is certainly one of Roger Moore's better films where he is allowed to be a lot more serious. I think certainly his best Bond film for me is A Spy Who Loved Me. then closely followed by Live and Let Die, and then probably this one. As I said, he certainly should have stopped after this film, Furious Only. So I'll go like a 7. Because I think Julian Glover is really good, and Topol's good, and
yeah, no, they are good.
Carol Bouquet is really great as Melina, so 7 is, I think, is fair. Right, let's add up the scores then for Your Eyes Only. For Your Eyes Only gets 42.3. So it's a bit of an ass whooping by Casino Royale, who gets 52.2. So I think before you started listening to this, I think you probably knew who was going to win this one. It's pretty obvious, but it's a childhood favourite of mine, so I have no shame in picking it.
You should have a little shame. I'm joking. It wasn't that bad.
Next week, as the French Dispatch comes out in a few weeks' time, actually, but we're just going to fit it in this one because there's another big space movie that's coming out, which is very exciting. Yeah, the French Dispatch comes out, and obviously Wes Anderson directs that film, so we'll be picking our favourite Wes Anderson ones, and we won't be picking Grand Budapest Hotel, because we did that way back when we did Ralph Fiennes' films, so if you love that film, check that episode out.
Oh man, that's such a good film.
Yeah. So we'll be having a look at some of his other work. Again, if you love what we're doing and you like hearing us, and you want to show us some appreciation and a big thank you, have a look on the show notes below, follow the link of Buy Me a Coffee, and you can buy us a coffee. It will be very much appreciated. Boaz, as always, you have been remarkable as Mr. Big. Not an use of euphemism, obviously.
Oh. I'm Mr. Humongous.
All right, bye-bye.
007 inches. No, actually, hang on a minute. That's terrible.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's pod. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to find out more about the podcast or suggest future topics for us to discuss related to upcoming releases, let us know on Instagram at Film vs. Film Podcast and on Twitter at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.